Muckspout.
What up, guys? Welcome to the Muckspout podcast. I got Ben with me.
How's it going?
John is out today on some personal matters, so we should see him again soon.
Mm-hmm.
And how you doing, Ben?
I'm good. Yeah, I've had a busy week. We're almost finished all the framing side of construction on the Primal Note studio, so things are starting to develop fairly quickly. I'm going to be at a sprint for a while, so I'm just kind of like taking some relaxation time while I still have it. And my birthday was last week, so I earned some relaxation as well.
Congratulations on another birthday.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a big deal when you get close to 40.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
I would have been 40 again.
Yeah, and you were on the road, weren't you?
I was on the road. Just got back from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Billy Ireland Comic and Cartoon Art Museum out in Ohio. Cool. Both out in Ohio. And the Christmas Story house.
Oh shit! With the lamp, with the leg lamp.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we went. So the Air and Water show was going on in Cleveland this weekend. And it's literally the beachfront, and then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's like in the middle of it all. And so It was like we knew that was going on. We were hoping that it wouldn't affect things. And all of a sudden, we were in this crazy long line, like of people just inching their way into this airport.
Yeah.
So we ended up turning and going around a back way and coming up into the parking garage, and actually ended up being smooth after that.
Oh, nice.
But we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'll show a video on that. We can talk about that in a little bit. But then we went out for some Chinese in Asia Town in Cleveland, and we're sitting there, and somehow the Christmas Story house came up, and we were like, you know what? Let's go. We have time. It's like 15 minutes away. So yeah, so we have to go check out the leg lamp, and it's actually, so they do a tour, and it's actually 3 houses, and like they own like this. Because they have the Christmas Story house. This is totally not punk rock, but I'm gonna go there anyways. They have the Christmas Story house. The next door they have the Bumpus house, and then across the street they have like a gift shop house that has a museum next to it and stuff with memorabilia and things. It was fun.
Cool. I can't think of anything more punk rock than going to an old Christmas movie house to look at leg lamps and buy merch.
The fucking Bumpuses, man. Those.
Actually, there was some pretty punk rock shit in that movie. Like, when the guy got his eye taken out by the BB gun.
All right.
That's pretty cool.
The crazy smoke monster in the basement, the furnace thing going on.
Yeah, that was all right. Yeah. I actually watched that for the first time. It was, it was a while ago. 2014, 2015, something like that. And there had been a huge ice storm in Toronto, taking out the power. And my girlfriend and we just started dating basically like a few months before that. And when the power went out, she had a great aunt up on the east end of the city that, like, she had no access to water or food. And she was on like the 9th floor, and there was no elevators, right? And she was in her 70s. She's in her 80s, I think. I think she's in her 90s now. It's getting crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So we went over there and gave her food, and then went and saw a Christmas Story. And at the end of the movie, there's that big ice storm, and everybody in the crowd was like, ha, 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 ha.
A little too close to home.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was a fun trip though. We packed in a lot. Actually, I had my first like official British food I've ever had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like this in the middle of Indiana. There's like this British restaurant, and so
what is British food like?
I had
Are we
fish and
talking
chips.
haggis with gravy on it, or
I had fish and chips, which
okay,
most of the time you get fish and chips. It's like those fish sticks, like nothing.
right?
But this was like real, like fish, like fried with the breading, and
You got to come to Canada, man. That's the only way we do it here.
yeah, I know. I don't think I didn't eat right when I was in Canada. Like I went to Mama's Pizza a bunch in Toronto.
That was
Um,
pretty good,
it was just cheap.
but
We were young, and it was
yeah,
we had the $5.25 for a Molson and a pizza.
nice.
So
Yeah,
that
yeah. There's some
was
killer food here. Yeah, especially in the last few years, it's really blown up. But that's also not punk rock. We should talk about
no.
music.
Yeah. Some big news this week was NOFX. If you want to talk about that,
Sure. Yeah.
apparently, this is like also like the least punk rock way for like information to come out about something. Apparently, Fat Mike made a comment on somebody else's comment on Instagram, I think, or something. They asked, "When are you coming? Or why do you hate Canada?" I think it was actually, and he was like, "When are you going to come back to Canada?" And he was like, "Right now, we're actually planning our exit. Like, we're done after 2023." And
Well,
then that kind of blew up everywhere.
I bet. Yeah. Those guys have been around. How long have they been around? When did they start?
Jeez, it had to be the early 90s at the latest, right?
Got to be something like that. Yeah. I feel like maybe even late 80s, possibly.
Yeah,
It's hard. It's all a blur.
it is.
You know? Yeah, they've been a fixture for a long time. Were you into NoFX back in the day?
Not terribly. Um, I think like I would hear them, but like it was like, Bad Religion and Green Day, and there's some stuff that I got into. I think that some of the other stuff was the message was a little more substantial maybe, and
Sure.
NoFX was kind of a parody of punk sometimes. Like
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. There's actually a band here in Toronto called 30 Going on 13 that remind me a lot of that old 90s NoFX kind of sound.
yeah.
But they're a legit parody band. Like they
Okay.
dress like 13-year-olds and talk about like they have a song called Shut Up Becky. They have another song that's Drunk at the Mall, I think it is. So it's just like completely just taking the piss out of that period in punk rock, and they're fantastic. My personal feeling on like bands like NoFX kind of calling it quits is, I'm a musician, but I'm also a lot of other shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how long you have to be NoFX before you can just kind of move on with your life and do some other shit. And they've been doing it for a long ass time. So
Right.
I'm sure they're not just NoFX at this point. They're dads
Right.
and they really have other jobs and other businesses that they're interested in pursuing. Like I think to Offspring, where like, the origin of Offspring was a bunch of guys that were in university and huge nerds, and they wanted to start a punk rock band to kind of prove that nerds are cool too.
Right.
But Noodles has a PhD in like, I don't know, like biochemistry or something,
Right.
and the lead singer has a PhD as well. So like, music was just a thing they were doing. They had other goals. So it doesn't. I'm happy that they're making an exit on their own terms, kind of, and they didn't get canceled or some shit. But
Right.
I
They've had plenty
music
of
is so
room to get
big.
canceled too.
Yeah, music is so big and broad, and it's always evolving. So I just don't have nostalgia. I'm not a sentimental person. So when bands break up, I'm always like, okay, see ya.
I actually am a super nostalgic person, so
Mm,
I'm kind of the opposite in that way.
fair
Um,
enough.
like when Jawbreaker got back together, like I don't know, 5 years ago now. Like I was so stoked because it had been like 26 years, and I was sitting there waiting for that whole time.
Wow.
So I am the
Do you get
polar
obsessed with bands? Is that the deal?
opposite. Some like Jawbreaker is definitely one that like I love everything they do, and I will go see them every chance I get. Actually, one of my road trips that I've done, like in terms of rock and punk, was a road trip from Chicago to New Jersey after they reunited, to see them again because they weren't coming around here soon enough. So I drove across country to go see them. At
How long a trip was that?
So I want to say it was like supposed to be like a 14-hour trip or something, but ended up taking like 21 hours to get to Jersey because we stopped a lot.
Stop for anything interesting, or just you had to take a bunch of dumps?
Oh yeah, 2 dumps. Actually, we came through Columbus, and so we actually stopped. That was the first time I ever went to the Billy Ireland cartoon and comic art museum.
Oh, cool.
So we actually popped in there for like a couple hours, checked that
Sweet.
place out, and then then just a lot of stopping because just stretching the legs and shit, you know.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it was like 21 hours later we pulled up. I was falling asleep. It was bad. But
Oh, you did it all in one go. You didn't even take like I would have pulled over my car and slept.
I wanted to get there. It was the day before my birthday. They were playing in Jersey, and then we went to like we had plans for like New York City the next day. We went and checked out the Amityville Horror House.
Oh, cool.
Growing up, I was big into like paranormal and stuff. So I loved the Jersey Devil stories in New Jersey.
Right.
So we went into like the woods over there, like the morning of the Jawbreaker concert. Like,
very cool.
We pack in a lot when we go places.
Yeah, I found some creepy shit in southwestern Ontario with a cousin of mine. Shout out to Brad Thorpe if he's listening. Like it's forever ago, and like I've always been really into paranormal stuff and into sort of conspiracy theory stuff. And I was hanging out with my cousin Brad. I hadn't seen him in years and years, and like we were little kids the last time we hung out, and then all of a sudden we're adults spending time together. And he was like, "You want to go see something creepy?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I do!" And we drove out. I don't know. It had to be like 45 minutes out into the woods. And then he was like, he kind of like pulled into this trail and then parked the car, and he was like, "Follow me." And he pulled 2 flashlights out, and I was like, "Oh, this is legit." Yeah. And we went through, and there was stuff hanging in the trees that was like all like it looked like someone had been performing a ceremony.
That's wild.
We found bones on the ground at one point, like animal bones, but still like, you know, it was just like, what is going on here? Middle of tobacco country. I was like, this is very strange. And then we drove home. And I've been haunted ever since.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. That's always been one of my side things was paranormal stuff. Like, well, like I did the Dulce comics.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
And then I was one of the hosts on Strange Tales Weekly for a little over a year. We did a bunch of episodes of that on YouTube.
Very cool. I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's
who'd you do that with?
My friends Jess Rogie and my buddy Joe.
Cool.
We did weekly. We did like these segments. They were kind of inspired by Unsolved Mysteries, but like we do like generally about a 2-minute segment, and we post it online about different paranormal or alien or whatever, something in that genre. Joe did a lot of conspiracy stuff that was fun, or scary as hell. What's
your favorite conspiracy?
Oh man, there's so
like
many.
The one that you're like, I don't know, that sounds legit.
Well, like Dulce had me at times, but it's pretty far fetched.
Yeah,
I've always actually.
Want to go into that?
Huh?
What is Dulce?
So it's like this underground base in New Mexico, Dulce, New Mexico, that's run by aliens and humans.
Okay.
And it I saw like this. Remember Jesse Ventura had that conspiracy show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He did an episode about it, and like they did such a great job. Actually, going back and watching it a second time recently because I hadn't seen it in a long time. It was pretty lousy, but I was super into it when they first did it.
Jesse Ventura is the most believable conspiracy theorist that's ever lived, in my opinion. He just seems so serious all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
and
check
then like
out
he's
this
had
shit.
like really
Look at over here. You can see there's the machine has a dome on the top of it. It's clearly not made by humans. Like,
yeah.
you almost want to believe him.
And then like he's always like had awesome roles.
Yeah,
like just in acting and wrestling and
man,
in
Predator.
government. He was a freaking governor. Like,
Yeah, and a pretty good one too. I mean, depending on who you talk to, I guess, but
yeah. So,
yeah,
but yeah, that's
cool. So, where were we? Oh my God, my ADD is running rampant.
yeah,
I think
right.
we were talking about your your trip to see Jawbreaker.
Yeah, Jawbreaker out and yeah, it was with War on Women open for them.
Oh, cool.
So that was pretty badass. Actually, that was one. So sitting before that, because I always get the things early, especially if I'm from out of town and I don't know where something's at.
Right.
So like they had like these big ads that would flash on the screen before they came out. And that was the first time that I saw an ad on the screen for a punk rock flea market. There's one the Trenton punk rock flea market out there. And that was like I was like watching that and I was like, oh shit, I should be selling stuff at the punk rock flea markets. So unfortunately, there's not enough of them in the Midwest. Right before COVID, there was one that I loved in Chicago that I did. It was a great time. But I need to.
Maybe you should start it up again.
Actually, I do know the person that runs it, and I need to bug her about it again and see if anything's going to happen with it. But
yeah, you should make that happen.
Man, it is so much work doing that stuff, though. Like I did a Zine Fest. I worked with a couple guys on setting up a Zine Fest locally.
Very cool.
Probably 6 years ago now or something. And it was so much fucking work. It was like another full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I've set up a show, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to go to work too. This is not easy.
And have I had a family. Like it was just a lot. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Maybe
that's why you need a team, right?
Was that?
That's why you need a team.
Yeah. It's true.
So how was the Jawbreaker show? Was it everything you dreamed?
It was. It always is.
Nice.
So at that point, I had never saw them when they were originally around. So at that point, I'd seen them. I was at the reunion show when they played Riot Fest in 2017. And then they came back and they played the Aragon Ballroom, saw them there. And then there was a little bit of a lull. And then they announced like, I think 6 shows around Jersey, New York. I think maybe it was one in Philadelphia or something. Like they were just kind of doing the area. And I was like, shit, I need to get out there. So when the tickets went on sale, I just bought the tickets with no like real plans for how I was going to go or who I was going to go with. And then I started seeing my girlfriend. And then I was like, it was like 2 weeks later. I was like, you want to go across country with me? So
there you go.
She was all in. So
nice.
It was a great time.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
When a girl decides to go with a strange man across the country to see a punk rock concert, you know it's love.
Yeah.
Oh. Very cool. So have they put out new music or is it just the same stuff that you got into when you were young?
It's so far it's the same stuff. Blake did there's a comic called the Furthest Place from Here, which is actually the title is based on a lyric from one of their songs. Cool. But it's put out by Image Comics, and every month, well, supposedly every month, it comes out with. There's a version that comes with a 7-inch. Because of the vinyl shortage, I've only seen 2 of those so far. But
right.
The first one had Blake from Jawbreaker playing. He did a cover of the song "All Night Long."
Oh, cool!
And it's
who was that? Was that the Commodores?
It might have been. I'm not sure offhand.
It was.
It's fun.
The Commodores were Lionel. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like I think that's the only like really new thing that's come from any of them since there's been talk about they've posted things about writing music and stuff here and there, like little comments. But
So what's your feeling on the changing of the guard? Because it really feels like there is sort of a shift happening, that punk rock is returning in a way, but it's not. The old ways are being left behind to some degree. So what's your feeling on that? Do you feel like this is a good thing, or these young kids, they don't know what they're missing?
No, I'm into it. Like, I love finding new stuff. There's a lot of new stuff out there, and and there's a lot of good stuff. Like, and there's a lot of stuff with purpose now. Like, I think that there wasn't a lot for a while. There was, like, in the George Bush years, there was some stuff going on.
Yep.
And then things kind of lost purpose, which was really irritating to me as somebody who follows politics somewhat, which I'm not going to get too deep into politics because that's boring as fuck. But
depending on what you talk about, I agree.
But like, there was so much that could have been protested, and so, like, with great songs and great music. After that, a lot of the same stuff didn't change.
Yeah.
And so that always kind of irked me, that there was kind of a big lull after that.
Yeah. You've ever seen the movie SLC Punk?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this line in it that I always remember. Matt Lillard, the main actor, plays the main protagonist. He says, he's talking about, like, there's a certain formula required for punk rock to thrive. And in oppressive societies, he says, it comes like fire. And I feel like I agree, there was a lot of stuff to argue and disagree with that was happening in, what is fondly known as the Obama years. But I think there was a bit of a rose-colored glasses situation going on. It was very similar to, like, the LBJ days, where it seemed like things were taking a turn for the better after some dark periods. But meanwhile, there's a lot of shady shit happening in the background.
Right.
But now it's all out in the open. Like, it feels like, broad strokes, again, don't want to get into politics, I'm with you, but broad strokes, I would say that it feels like a lot of stuff that was happening behind the curtain is now, like, the spotlight is on it, and they're like, like, they don't care anymore.
Right.
There's a growing anger. And when I was saying that the scene in Toronto has really, like, found its stride in the last episode, I think that this is a major factor in it, is that there's this unresolved resentment and frustration with the way things are developing, and it needs an outlet. And when I was a kid, a mosh pit was a great outlet, because you can't, like, we couldn't vote, we couldn't do anything to, like, our parents wouldn't even listen to us when we were like, the planet's going to be on fire. And, eventually, what's that?
They still won't.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. They're still like, shut up, kid. I'm like, I'm 40, dude. Yeah. So I think there's a unity of purpose that's happening with our age and the generations following us, actually, where we're all kind of all in agreement that, shit's fucked. And if we can't do something about it, we're going to at least dance our rage out,
I find that a lot of it, a lot of the female fronted bands are really putting out, like, really powerful stuff.
That is blown up right now. One of the festivals we did here that we did all the filming for, it's on the YouTube channel for Primal Note. It was called Bitch Fest. And shout out to Ashley Kachia. Oh yeah, nice. You can find all our videos on primalnote.com or on our YouTube channel, Primal Note. Bitch Fest in particular was awesome. So it's put on by a group called Save Toronto Music Venues, which is when it started, it was all female. The management team, the organizers, and basically the idea was that no one gave a shit about the music scene here when COVID hit, and so all these venues were struggling to keep their doors open, and or doors closed even in that case. And so they basically, as soon as we were able to have shows, they immediately started organizing and getting all their friends together to get bands on stage and get crowds out. And it really, like, saved the music scene in Toronto. I think that group in particular made a huge impact. And, like, I think they're going to be a group that people talk about here in Toronto in the future. Like that was a touchstone moment, you know.
That's awesome.
But at one point, they were planning on putting on a bunch more shows and getting involved in some other music festivals and that kind of stuff to kind of like create a little bit of a collaborative experience. And the main brains behind Save Toronto Music Venue is a girl named Ashley, and she reached out to one of the festivals and was like, "Hey, we got some bands that are interested in playing. Do you have some time?" And they said, "Sorry, we have enough female bands." And she was like, "Fucking excuse me?
Yeah.
Do you have enough male bands? Like, what the
Right.
fuck is that, right? Like, who cares if they're female, you know?" So that kind of inspired her, and she was like, "You know what? I'm going to do an all-female music festival." So it was all-female bands or female-fronted bands, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And like some of the heaviest shit I've heard in years came out of these shows, man. Like I think the females in the punk scene have been waiting in the wings for a moment, and this is their moment. And goddamn, I just wish it happened earlier, man.
All right. That's one of the takeaways just from last week, talking about some of our favorite music, their favorite recent music. We all had female fronted bands pretty much. Like,
Yep.
multiple.
Interrupters.
Yeah.
Sprints.
Yeah. The Sprints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah. Wet Leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the Toronto bands that like, there's a crazy, do you ever listen to Every Time I Die?
No.
They're based in Buffalo, and they're like Southern hardcore, I would describe them. They got kind of a bluesy thing going on, but they're real heavy, and the lead singer has one of the best screams, I think, in the business. They're fantastic. They broke up recently, actually. The lead singer had a bit of a thing, and it ended, it seems badly,
Yeah.
but their early shit's fantastic. And I think I don't want to get into this too much on this podcast, but I think you know about my experience with police at the G20 protest in Toronto in 2010, where you know, I got my ass kicked by the cops. I ended up being on the front cover of one of the Every Time I Die albums because I was wearing their T-shirt, and someone caught the shot. It was a wild thing. Anyway, one of the bands that's coming up here called Strange Limbs. You should definitely give them a listen. They've got an Every Time I Die kind of feel to them. 3-piece guitarist with a bunch of cool ass pedals, drummer, and a female singer, screamer, I should say. Man, these guys, they shred. Like, they're fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I guess back to the travel tour stuff.
Right.
You have you have any trips you've taken to?
I have one crazy trip. The show was great, and the trip there wasn't anything to speak of, but it was the trip home that was a little insane. So Chuck Pino was actually part of this story.
Oh.
So a friend of ours, a mutual friend, was in a band called Fire Hydrant way back in the day. They actually just reunited, and I think they're starting to put some music together again. And I was a huge fan of Fire Hydrant back in the day. They were like, I don't know how to describe them. Post-punk, I guess, sort of in the emo zone for a bit. Cool shit though. And I went to see one of their shows at the El Macambo. It's a legendary music venue here in Toronto. The Rolling Stones used to play it, that kind of thing. It's like kind of the CBGBs of Toronto.
Okay.
And yeah, we went there, we watched the show, and we were all, it was Charlie's firstborn's birthday the next day. So the plan was we were all going to go, we were going to see Fire Hydrant, and then we had a ride home. Someone had a van, and we were all going to get a ride back to Charlie's. And then in the morning, we were going to have birthday party. And it was also kind of around my birthday as well. So we were going to kind of celebrate everything together. It's going to be fun. So anyway, show ends, and we leave the venue and go out to the van we're all going to get in together. And someone had tried to hotwire it and ripped all the wires out. And so we're not getting home.
Wow.
So not to mention that a bunch of cash got stolen. So like a bunch of us didn't have any money. So we have to get, it's probably like an hour drive, maybe a little more than that, to where Chuck was living at the time. So we got to figure out a way to get, an hour away without a car. And luckily, there's some transit north of Toronto, but not a lot. So anyway, there's this one guy, kind of sketchy dude, who said, he's like, oh, if we can get to such and such place, then we can get my truck and then everybody can go from there. We were like, okay, we just got to figure out our way there. So we started taking the bus and on Yonge Street, which is the main street in Toronto, when you're heading north, if you're on it after 1 o'clock, they call it the Vomit Comet. Oh. Because there's no other transit in the city. And, obviously it's a little sketchy when everybody's drunk. So it's avoided at all costs. Anyway, so we're on the Vomit Comet, and I had my djembe with me, my hand drum, because I was gonna play a little bit for Chuck's kid's birthday. So I'm on there, and this guy's like, "Hey man, do you play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I play a little bit." I didn't know how to play very much at the time. This is like years and years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And I was like, yeah, not much, but and he's like, come on, lay down a beat. And I pull it out, I start playing a little bit, and this guy starts rapping and scatting on top of it, and it sounded fucking amazing. So Charlie stands up in the middle of this and throws his hat down. He's like, come on, people, let's get some cash going. So people started throwing change in. We ended up paying for part of the cab with the change that we made off of it. And then when we got to the end of the transit line, we had to take a cab to get to the next town. So we figured out our cash situation, got in the cabs. But this sketchy dude, he's like, oh yeah, no, don't go to, he's like, I'm going to go pick up my truck at such and such place. I'll meet you guys at another place. And I was like, okay, no problem. I'm young, stupid, naive. I don't really know. I'm like, okay, sure. We'll go meet you there. And so I go with my friends, like, do, 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 do. Charlie is like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going straight to where that truck is. This is dumb. So he goes straight there, and he gets there ahead of this dude. And dude arrives, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And Chuck's like, "We're here to get our ride home." And he looks a little perturbed, but he gets them in the truck, and they're about to head out of town. And he's like, "No, you got to pick up our other friends." So meanwhile, myself and a friend of mine are standing in the middle of a mall parking lot at 3 o'clock in the morning in the cold, just like, I hope someone comes to get us. End up rolling up, and we're in a truck. So at this point in the night, you can't really have a pile of people in the back of a truck. If the cops see you, you're going to get pulled over.
Yeah.
And the driver, I'm not sure he should be driving at this point. Yeah. So what we had to do is so I'm 6'4", just for context. And there was two other tall people and then a bunch of short, chubby folks. So we all, 5 of us, had to cram ourselves in the back of this truck bed and lay down so we couldn't be seen. It looked like a human Jenga. It was wild. And so we're all kind of piled on top of each other in various awkward ways. And the car goes off, and have you ever not been able to see a speedometer, but you feel like we're speeding right now?
Right.
That was definitely happening. And it was freezing cold. So we're all freezing, and our pants are starting to pull up. So we were tucking each other's socks pants into our socks for each other, because we can't reach anything. We can't bend over. And then we started singing songs. And just I think there was a joint that got passed around at one point, because we were like, fuck it. I mean, who cares? If we get pulled over, we're screwed anyway. We might as well be high. And we didn't get home until 4 o'clock in the morning. And we were up at 9 a.m. to celebrate a birthday the next day. So that was pretty epic, trip home. Charlie can probably fill in a bunch of blanks, because I wasn't there for half of his side.
I've had nights like that where everybody's kind of got their parts of the story.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like some kind of movie from the 90s.
It sucked, but as soon as we got inside, into Charlie's apartment, and all sat down and told the babysitter, because the babysitter was a friend of ours, we told the babysitter the story. By the time we were done the story, we were like, this one's going to stick around for a while.
We have a story like that with my friends, where we went to this abandoned insane asylum nearby. actually live closer to it now than we did back then. But actually, most of it's torn down now too. But we went there this one night, and it was a wild night. Like actually, I wrote about it in Blister, so you'll read it eventually.
Nice.
But one of my stories is about 95% that story. But like we were like there, we were inside, and the police showed up, and like kids like that weren't with us like came running out of this building and booking it. One of my buddy's brothers ran back into the building while we were all running away to get to our minivan. I think it was a minivan at the time. And I saw him running away, so I like went and like chased after him to make sure he wasn't abandoned alone. And after that, it was like us like just sneaking along this insane asylum, the outside, the inside a little bit, just trying to figure out how the hell to get home. And it was
we're stranded.
Yeah. We found out that actually, so his brother, who's one of my best friends, he actually ended up parking somewhere else and came back for us, with the police like crawling this place. But then like by the time it was funny because when we finally got home, he had his story of walking around the place alone looking for us. We had our story of sneaking around the place with the police shining lights. Like there was a point where we were going across this field that was between these two buildings, and the spotlight came across, and the guy that I was with was like, "Oh shit!" And I dropped to the ground and I hit him in the shin, and he dropped to the ground with me, and we laid there flat. And I was in my head, I'm a big dude. Like I look like a big fucking lump of fucking laundry or something. Like the spotlight went over, came back, and we got up and booked it.
Yeah, holy shit.
It was like, I don't know. It was at least 2 or 3 hours of that before we finally ran into my buddy and made our way back to his car. But he like while he was looking for us, he ran into some ghost hunters who played like audio for him from the area.
This isn't a true story.
I know, right? Meanwhile, my sister was with us. Her and two of our other friends. I think it was just they were all it was three. So the three females that were there, they took off in the car, and they actually got pulled over by the police. They pretended that they were lost, and they got directions out to the town, and they got the fuck home. Like it was just like everybody had all kinds of like wildness. It was.
Did you see any wild shit? I mean, other than the cops and everything. Like, I mean, like, did you run into any strange old men with scraggly beards?
No, but the place itself was creepy as hell. Like there's tunnels underneath the insane asylum that connect between the buildings. So like if we went downstairs to one, and like when you start going down there, there's like chairs and stuff. Like there's rumors around that like inmates or not patients, I guess, came back.
What's the difference at this point, right?
Yeah, they were basically a lot of them were dispersed into the community. Like there's a big mental health need here, and there's a lot of facilities for it here now too. But there was like stories that they would come back and live in basically the ruins. But yeah, it was a wild night. But it reminds me of that. There's like just if you made a movie about it, it would be like 3 different stories going on.
Yeah,
they all connected back. And actually, when we connected back at my parents' house. And God, I don't know if they were there or not. I don't remember, because it seems weird. There was like 10 of us in the front room when we all met back up. But we all got back together in 2 different cars and went out to another like paranormal spot. Like we were just like, fuck it, let's go. And
really, just went out to the next.
Yeah.
Where was the next one? Was it just boring?
It was. So there's like this cemetery, and it's one of those cemeteries where the story is if you stop the car, and turn off your engine, some handprints appear on the bumper and your car will move. I don't know. We stopped there, turned off the engine. We heard like a lot of clicking and things around us, but we were like, is that just something the car does? I don't know. I've never like stopped and listened in a creepy cemetery before. Like
could be a cat. You don't know.
Right. So yeah. I can't say one way or another if anything was going on there.
Do you believe in that shit?
It sometimes.
I've seen some weird stuff, man. I'll tell you a story. I can't even verify the story anymore because the only people that saw this were me and my stepdad. My stepdad's no longer with us, but I swear to you, this is true. I don't know what to think of it, but I was 8 years old, and we had just moved into a new townhouse, and it was near the beach. So I lived in a town called Jackson's Point, and there was a lake there called Lake Simcoe. And this little house that we had rented was maybe a 5-minute walk when I was 8, when I was like this big, you know what I mean? So it was like, 2 steps away. And it must have been second or third night there. We hadn't been there long. We didn't have cable. I know that because I was watching Big Trouble in Little China on the antenna. And out of nowhere, we heard this really strange noise. I can't even describe what it was. It was like a low hum, but it wasn't like this was let me think. If I was 8 years old, this was 91. So like there's no Wi-Fi, there's no 5G,
Right.
like you're lucky if your phone works. So no idea what the sound was. And then there was this flash of light like towards the lake. And all 4 of my family members, my mom, my dad, my sister, and I all were like, what the hell was that? We all ran to the sliding glass doors to the backyard, and we're like looking out and didn't see anything. Like there was a sort of like dissipating light in the distance, but this is the middle of the night. So like there should be no dissipating light anywhere. Again, 91. It's not like there was a lot of, urbanization going on at that time.
Right.
It's very strange. But anyway, my mom and sister, of course, were just like, let's just go back to watching the movie. And they both sat down. And my dad and I were standing there just like looking out there, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And then out of nowhere, like we hear, and then the house starts rattling. And we're like, what is going on? And then out of nowhere, we saw these 2 shadows just like right across towards the lake. Didn't see any track lights, nothing. But they were helicopters, and they were low enough that they shook the house. Like it looked like they were riding the tree line. And no idea what happened after that. My dad and I looked at each other, and he was like, aliens. And then we both went and sat. Yeah, I swear to you that happened. I have no idea what that was about.
Me and a buddy, when we were kids, we swore we had a UFO experience. We were just on the corner outside my house, like 2 houses down, on the corner talking, and like all of a sudden, like the woods behind us like lit up. And for the longest time, we talked about it being aliens. When I think back, there was like a line of, there's a good chunk of trees, but then there was like this drive where people would go back and like dump like old washing machines and shit. Like it was this like this dirt area. And so now that I'm an adult, I think like, well, maybe it was headlights or something. Like it was unusual, but I do have this was totally not the topic, but ghosts are interesting.
Yeah, whatever.
It was so probably 4 years ago, I was at a buddy's house and we were having some drinks, not a ton, but I was staying in Indiana at the time. I headed out like right around midnight, driving down the road into the country. It was about an hour drive from there where I was staying. And there's about, I don't know, not too far, about a handful of blocks away from my buddy, there's this cemetery. I was driving by it and it was pouring rain. Like I was leaving because the weather was supposed to get really bad. And it was already raining at that point. It was pouring pretty good. Driving by, and there was this woman walking along the cemetery in a white dress. And, and so I was like, I drove past, actually. I drove past, and then I was
like,
her
hair in her face? Was she like this?
I had barely just seen her, like to my left, like while I was driving. But I was like, dang, it is really pouring out here. I should see if she needs help. So I drove down the street, turned around.
Oh, you sweet innocent victim of every movie ever.
Right. So I turned around in this like farm. There's like this farm thing, whatever. Turned around in the parking lot, came back down, I pulled up alongside and I said, "Hey, do you need a lift somewhere?" Because it wasn't like, I don't know, a handful of blocks down was like a gas station and stuff.
Right.
So, anyways, she like she kept walking and she turned to me and said, "Thank you, but no, sir." And no, she didn't actually look at me. I don't think it's foggy. Anyways, I kept going, and then I was like, okay. And then I drove down actually to that gas station that I was talking about. I went in and got a coffee because there's like a cop sitting over there, and I had just been drinking a little bit. It wasn't much, but I was like, I got a little nervous about that. Anyways, I grabbed the coffee, filled up my gas tank, headed back out, and then she wasn't there on that road anymore. Which there's other roads along there. She could have turned, but I was like driving along and I hadn't thought too much about it. And then I was like, that was weird, wasn't it? Like in my head. And so I actually called up my friend Jess Rogie that I hosted that show with. And I was like, let me tell you about something that just happened. Like she's in LA, so I knew she was still awake.
Right.
And I told her about it, and she was like, "Eric, you just had a ghost experience." And I was like, "Did I? I don't know. It's fun though."
I want to find what time period it was that everybody that died was wearing a white dress.
Right.
You know, like it seems like, did people just die in their sleep and they're all wearing nightgowns? What was going on?
Yeah, like ghosts don't come back in like tube tops and shit.
All right. I guess this is the topic of our podcast now. So I have one more story, and then maybe we should wrap it up, talk about some music a little bit or something.
Yeah, I do. I have a vacation video to show. That's always fun.
That's right. Okay. Maybe we'll save the story for another time.
No, you go ahead.
Because it's kind of okay. It's a little complicated. So the house I moved into that I lived in for 10 years when I was a kid. We moved there when I was 9. So the year after the helicopter thing, moved into this house, and there's this empty lot next door. Okay, so it's all overgrown, and there's this old rickety shed in the back, and the only path in this property is a driveway that connects my street with the street basically behind my house. So it was like my house, and then there was another house that backed onto ours, and a fence separated our yards kind of thing. And the same thing happened next door, but they had a pathway that connected the two streets. So anyway, this place creeped me right out because I'm a kid. And it was like the first week that we lived there, I had this crazy dream that someone was breaking into my house. So I had to go save my sister, make sure she was okay. I was like, my parents will be fine. I have to take care of my sister. So I would run in her room, wake her up, grab her, and take her down to the garage. And I open the door. My sister goes in. I turn around, I close the door behind me, and when I turn back around, the garage is empty. There's nobody and nothing in it. But at the far end, we just had a big garage door, and then there's this little like standard like house door right next to it that doesn't exist in real life. And went over and opened the door, and I'm out in my front yard. So I go out to the edge of the street, and it's a night, evening. It's a cool breeze. Like it feels real. It feels more real than a dream, if you know what I mean. And I feel this urge. I have to go down that pathway into the empty lot next door. So I start heading down that path, and out of the shed come these like glowing white spirit. Like you remember Mr. Burns in that episode with "I bring you love."
Yeah.
They look just like that. This is long before The Simpsons ever did that. And they all come out and they surround me, and they start grabbing my clothes and pulling at me and going, help us, you need to help us. And I freaked out and like ran, like pushed them all away and ran to the other side of the pathway. And when I looked back, they were standing right at the edge of the property line and just staring at me. And then I woke up, freaked me right out.
Yeah.
Now, in retrospect, I was probably just scared to death of that lot. But I had that dream like every other day for like 6 months. Wow. And then it became slightly less frequent over the years, but it still kept coming up. It was the same dream every time. I'd have to save my sister, run out into the front of my house, go down the pathway. It got to the point where it was so kind of like routine for me that I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess this is where they come out, and then I'm gonna run away and like look back, and then I wake up again. You know, like it just got boring.
Yeah.
So anyway, flash forward, I'm 14, 6 years later, and this construction company has moved in next door, and they're about to build a property, so they're clearing the space. So my stepdad goes over, talks to the owner of the company, and asks, you know, do you need a shithead to keep out of trouble for the summer? And, you know, basically convinces this guy to hire me so that I can learn some trade. So that night I had the dream one last time. I go down the pathway, the spirits all come out, and I turned into an animal, a wolf, and they all kind of backed up. It was the first time that they'd ever reacted in any way to me. And they all backed up, and then I kind of like walked through them and then turned around and looked back. And instead of standing there looking at me, they all had their heads hanging and they walked back into the shed. And the next day, we knocked that shed down, and I never had the dream again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the property that my house was built on, that entire neighborhood was built on a swamp that they used to dump bodies in back in the day. So I found that out many years later. And then I was like, oh, shit. So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm agnostic about all this stuff, you know?
Yeah. That's wild.
It's a weird ass dream though, especially a dream that you have like 100 times. Like, I don't know.
Right. All right. So I can show this video. It's
Please.
a couple minutes long. It's just a lot of glimpses of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then I did a little bit of voiceover on it. So
Cool.
Here we go. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio is a badass destination for any music fan. I've been there a couple times. Last time there was an exhibit for the end of the band's Warped Tour. This time I was there as a Foo Fighters fan. I had to see their part of the exhibit before they cleared it out to make room for the 2022 inductees. As I said, there is something there for everyone. Classic rock, R&B, punk, blues, rap, whatever. It's an amazing shrine to the history of music in this past century, and no stone has been left unturned. The punk in me loved seeing things like Joey Ramone's jacket, Joe Strummer's guitar, and the CBGB awning. The Chicago in me enjoyed items from Smashing Pumpkins and one of my favorite venues, the Metro. Another fun one was the handwritten lyrics to No Sleep Till Brooklyn on the back of a Tide detergent stationery piece. They even have an entire section where musicians can stop and show off their skills. And if you go, make sure you check out the theater where they show clips from previous inductee ceremony concerts. It's the most badass theater I've ever been in. I already can't wait to go back. So my voiceover was done first thing in the morning. So I was still kind of asleep, I guess.
One of the coolest places. I'm sorry.
I hadn't listened to it since I made it. That's funny.
Man.
Like we had neighbors upstairs at our Airbnb. We had neighbors upstairs, and then my girlfriend was like in the next room. So I was like, just anyway.
Cool, man. No, it was man. I really want to go now. Honestly.
Yeah, that place is awesome. Like so last time we went was I don't know, maybe 3 years ago or something. Like before COVID, and so like at that time they had the Vans Warped Tour was ending, so they had an exhibit about that, and then they had 50 years of Woodstock going on, and so like one of the very first items, it was kind of weird because it was like the section about Woodstock. One of the very first items was actually like Green Day stuff. There was Billy Joe Armstrong's shoes from '94, like
94, yeah.
Blood. And gosh, there's a couple other things from them.
Speaking of, have you seen that documentary on Woodstock '99?
You know, I saw there was one on Hulu before the latest one, and I saw that one like a couple years ago, and I heard about the new one, but I was like, I already heard all this stuff on the Hulu one, but it's messed up.
So for anybody that hasn't seen the Hulu one, Netflix has a documentary on Woodstock '99 called Trainwreck. Man, oh man. I remember watching that shit on Much Music when I was a kid, and there was a lot more going on than I thought. But even as a little kid watching that, I was like, yeah, you know, when I found out that the water was like $5 a bottle, I was like, yeah, I'd set that shit on fire too. But man, like seeing that documentary, it just kind of hammered home for me that, like, you know, what we were aiming for as fans of music when we were young was a free space to explore, and what we were given was a casino, and that was no more apparent to me than in Woodstock '99, and it reinforced for me how important it is that, like, what happens now has grassroots approach to it, because it's so easy for music to get co-opted. You know, that was the reminder for me, was that, like, it can easily become a commercial enterprise, and you know, everybody should make money for sure, but it's like the goal should be making putting on a killer show,
and having community. Like, if you have a really strong community around something like that, you're not going to have, I mean, there was like an epidemic of like rape and stuff at that thing. Like, it was horrible. Like,
and compare it to Burning Man, where no piece of trash is left on the ground before everybody leaves. You know, and I'm not a burner, right? But like, there is a culture there. There is a community there. They, like, everybody I've talked to that's gone to Burning Man, they have like a religious look in their eyes when they talk about it. And that doesn't happen because, you know, of a bunch of cool DJs. It's like there's something else happening there that's human centric. Like, you know, I kind of feel like, you know, a lot of the conflict and struggle that we've been through in the last, I'll say 20 years, if we're going to be smart about it, we're going to take this as a lesson that, like, people have to come first. It has to be about, you know, being a unit, being a team.
Yeah.
Because, like, it was very clear watching that Woodstock documentary that there was team burn it down. That was about it at the end, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Woodstock exhibit was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this year they had like I was there as a Foo Fighters fan, like about 100%. And the like their exhibit was cool. I mean, they have the inductee exhibit. So there was like Kraftwerk was one, LL Cool J.
Oh, cool.
There was like this maybe like 6 inductees or so in this section, and they each had like, I don't know, like maybe a 6-foot section. So that was really cool. But they also had like so that, well, in December that that Beatles documentary came out, like 12-hour documentary. That, so they had a whole exhibit on that, and it was kind of cool watching, like, you watched parts of it there, and they had like the screens. They did some really cool stuff with screens. Like when you watch them on the rooftop, they have like simultaneously they're showing like what the police are doing, like trying to figure out how to get up there and stuff. Like, so they did a lot of like cool juxtaposition like that in that exhibit.
Very cool. Didn't U2 rip that off?
Yeah, except for they got shut down pretty quick, I think.
There's a couple of times where people tried to. Do you remember that music video for "Sleep Now in the Fire" by Rage Against the Machine? Do you ever see that?
I might have, but I don't recall now.
It was directed by Michael Moore. This is way before Bowling for Columbine. This is the early days. And
he's a good
they
fit
basically.
for them.
What's that?
He's a pretty good fit for them, though. Like he was always like on that.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. So this was. Let me think. This must have been just before 9/11. I think it was 2000. And they basically had an entire concert that they did not have like permits for or nothing like that. And they basically just went straight to Wall Street, set up a stage, and started playing Rage Against the Machine in front of Wall Street with a huge crowd. And the police ended up having to shut them down. But basically, Michael Moore just like created. Do you remember in the 60s they had this thing called happenings? I learned about this in art history. It's kind of a weird thing. So this is a moment where performance art started becoming a big deal. You know, it was during the beat poetry moment. And so what would happen is there would be these collectives of sort of social commentary artists that would put together like events that would happen in public that no one would know was happening, and they would just sort of arrive at a subway station or like in a mall or something like that, and they would do this thing that was like an artistic sort of performance, and not document anything, just like have it happen, see how people react, and then just dissipate. And this was very much like a happening, where it's like nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden there was a giant crowd in the stage, and like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
That's how the Beatles one was too. Like they were up there and they're just playing, and then people are just kind of stopping, and it's really funny. I turned to my girlfriend and I was like, because they kept showing like these, it would always be like this old white guy would walk up and like start complaining. And I was like, man, old white guy's been ruining stuff forever.
Totally. Shh, we're becoming old white guys. Keep it on the DL, at least for another 20 years.
So we went to the Mansfield prison, or Mansfield Reformatory. It's where they filmed Shawshank Redemption.
Okay, cool.
So we went there the other day, and I made a joke. The girl asked any discounts, any military, and I turned to my girlfriend. I said, senior almost, and then she gave me the senior discount. And I was like, what? I was walking away and I looked at my receipt and I was like, oh my gosh, she just gave me the senior discount.
You are a rude young lady.
Yeah. I was like, this is the second time in the last couple of years that somebody from the newest generation, the Zennials or whatever, has done this to me. And both times I'm kind of mixed. I'm like, well, I mean, they did save me money.
Yeah, I say lean in. Whatever. I've got the opposite problem. People think I'm 25. And they're like, oh, you'll understand when you're older. I'm like, dude, I think I'm older than you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. So, I don't know. I had another video that I was going to show, but maybe I'll save it for another time. It was just a record store visit, but there's always time for that.
Why don't we do that next week or next episode? We can do favorite record stores.
Yeah, we can talk about some record stores in our areas and where we've been.
Sweet. Any bands or news you want to shout out before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, if you're watching as a Muckspout fan that backed Blister, I now have all 3 of my books. They came in while I was out of town.
Nice.
So I'm pretty stoked to start shipping those out. I'm going to start on that this week. It's going to take a little while to process everything, but I'm real stoked about that.
Very cool.
And then I guess I do have the let me find the graphic for it. Punk the Burbs is still coming up September 30th in Lisle, Illinois. So it was fun walking around. So like at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's like, I spent a little bit of time in the Midwest room and stuff, and they had one of the posters with like from like God, sometime in the 80s, and it had the bull weevils on it, and I was like, hey, they're on that, they're on our thing. Like I forget like how long certain bands have been around. Like, and
Yeah,
they're
man.
still out there kicking ass. Like,
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually have a show I want to shout out as well. I'll hook you up with a graphic for next week.
cool.
September 16th, Gusapalooza for any GTA people, Greater Toronto Area folks. It's going to be in Cookstown, which is a small town just outside of Toronto. Big festival. It's so much fun. And we're playing Friday, Pioneer Anomaly, my space punk band. Will be playing Friday at 6:30 p.m. So come with earplugs or Kleenex for after your ears start bleeding.
Awesome. If you want to send me that information, I can plug it into the show notes on that
Hell
page.
yeah.
Cool.
I'll hook that up.
All right. Well, missed John this week, but had a good time chatting with you.
Yeah, same, man.
So next time, the plan is in 2 weeks from yesterday, I guess. We're going to have Chuck Pino and Sean Barber on talking about their comic Belial. Yeah.
I mean, Chuck's not going to say a word.
No,
you know?
He doesn't like being live at all.
No, he doesn't talk. He's so quiet. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. They have the comic is very music influenced.
Oh hell yeah, yeah.
So that'll be fun to talk about.
Yep,
how that works.
Totally.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Muckspout.com if you want some more stuff to check out. Last week's episode is up there. And thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you guys
Peace
later.
out, guys.